Oh, what's up? What's up? Been a bit. Been away for a bit. Trying to, I don't know, trying to just do my thing. And unfortunately, it's cut into time all over the place. But I'm bringing this podcast back, man. Hoping to liven it up a lot more in this year. But I had to do a new special episode today, um, talking about the 31-year anniversary of Typo Negative's album Bloody Kisses. And I don't know how many of you people are aware of this. I wasn't even aware of this, but during that whole mask bullshit, I never wore it, but I saw it and I had to have it, man. Uh, Wanted to have a mask with some style, you know what I'm saying? So, 31 years ago, man, Bloody Kisses gets released. Shit, does that seem like a lifetime ago? Especially for like for a fan, and especially for all the fans, I'm sure, who share the same sentiment. You know, when you think back about the world 31 years ago, it was a totally different place. We're talking what? That's Jesus. That's like it just seems like another lifetime, man. You know, I mean, um, when I I wasn't even aware of it when I saw the post. I think I saw a couple of posts commemorating, talking about the album being released all those years ago. You know, shit, August 17th, 1993. Man, holy shit, that's crazy. That's insane. Think about 1993, if you will. If you were alive at that time, I can tell you this first and foremost: it was such a different time, man. It's almost like another planet, like another universe, man. So different than what's going on today, and I can't believe it's been that long. Um, but it's so awesome to see that. You know, it's still a landmark album as far as I'm concerned. In fact, I think Johnny Kelly on his Instagram page, he had a real awesome post, man. Just trying to find it. First off, I saw the typo negative official post there. If you could see that, 31 years ago today. And then looking at Johnny Kelly's page, he had something cool. I think he had the same thing commemorating it, but I think he had something like here it is. Yep. And it says game changer. You know, man, was he right, because it was a game changer. For people that don't know, you know, I mean, for me personally, like, that was the first album I ever heard from Typo Negative. Go figure. It was 93 and I was only what, 13? So I was not really familiar with them at all. You know, the way I became familiar with them was listening to, at the time, 104.3 and 92.3, and they had a metal block that they would play at all odd hours, and I heard, of course, Black Number One and Christian Woman. And not to sound cliche, but I was just I it was a couple of things going on. For me, I felt like, wow. First off, this is some different shit. That's what mystified me. I wanted to know who these guys were, who that voice was. You know, how was that? I've never heard anything like that. You know, and then after listening to it over and over and over again, you start to get more familiar with it. Like for me, I was like, damn. I'm like, you know. Then you listen to the album, and then you get into the band hardcore, and you're like, damn, like, these are some people that are speaking my language. You know, like, I think it's sort of rare in life that you find musicians or music that speaks to what's going on in your mind and your soul. And that's the way I felt with this band, especially with this album, you know, with all their albums. So that was the first album I ever heard, those first two songs. And it's funny because I don't think I really heard those two songs till later on in the year. I want to say, I think it had to be 94 that I started discovering them. So that means that the album had been out for a while, and I had not yet discovered them. Because again, back in those days, the way to discover new music, there was various different ways. There was the regular radio, like I said, if you were lucky to get radio stations that played uh, blocks of new stuff, metal blocks, what have you. If I don't know if the video was on MTV yet. MTV was large and in charge back in those days with music videos. I don't know if the video was on. I'm sure it was. I had never had seen it before. So it's a lot different than it was today. Today, with social media and whatnot, there was access galore. So when a new album comes out, you hear about it right away, whether it's on a podcast, whether it's through Instagram, social, Facebook, TikTok, whatever the fuck. And, the word gets out there really quick. Or you're listening to satellite radio, one of the many stations that would speak about music like this, like maybe Ozzy's Boneyard, maybe Lithium, what have you. And they would mention a band like that or be playing a band like that and then talk about this is off the new album. So it was a lot. I want to say it was a lot different back then because there were so many different outlets that we had. And that, I think, was the part of the fun of listening to regular radio was that, especially at certain hours, if you tuned in sometimes late at night, you got these cool metal blocks that they don't play during prime time, and you got to hear a lot of new and upcoming stuff. And this happened to be that time. I mean, it was late at night, I remember, and I heard the first two songs, Black Number One and a Christian Woman, off the album. And again, not much not much was known about them for me. Uh, I had no knowledge of anything about them, but as I got into them, I remember buying the album on tape, man. Used to pull out the thing on the tape and used to pull out the booklet and you had all the words and I had never heard anything like that before. The lyrics were so unique and yet so genius that you couldn't help but want to know more. I mean, I remember the rumors too. Like people were saying, "Oh, the lead singer lives in Brooklyn." I was like, "Damn! Like that's a stone's throw from me." I wonder where he lives now. Again, this going back to '93. The internet was very young, and there were no outlets like that to find out where people lived. Is it true? But I beat all that shit. And I mean, now it's everything's out there, on a whim, real fast. But what Johnny Kelly had up, Game Changer, is 100%. I mean, there's a lot of people. I think I saw a couple of polls asking what your favorite Type O Negative album was, and that's impossible for me. It's impossible to choose because I'm just such a big fan of theirs. But I like all their albums and all their work. But I think that, I mean, from some of the posts I was seeing, it was fluctuating between um, October Rust and Bloody Kisses. So I could understand that because both of them are filled with such wonderful tracks. But this, I think, from the cover art alone, which was just like something, out of the ordinary at that time, the sound that they created on that album was out of the ordinary. It wasn't grunge. It wasn't metal. It wasn't, something from the 80s that carried over into the 90s. It was totally different. Peter's voice was totally different. The music, the riffs were totally different. Then when you saw the videos, everything just tied together, and it just created exactly what I think it had set out to be, game changer music. So it's really rare, I think, in music that we have albums like that don't have a home in terms of like, at the time, 93, you're talking about grunge, you're talking about Nirvana, Soundgarden, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Hole. You're talking about so many different things going on there. And then there's Type O Negative. And that's one of the reasons why I've always loved them is because they're sort of their own thing. And I think that there's always been that, you ever see that interview with Peter where they're trying to categorize the music? And I think, he talks about that, being put in the category. Uh, they had their own category. In fact, I think that they kind of were the pioneers of their own genre of music. If you really want to talk about it, I mean, some people call it, doom metal, goth metal, whatever you want to call it. It was their own unique sound. And on that album, I mean, obviously the two songs that pop up the most are Christian Woman and Black Number One. But they have probably the greatest cover, one of the greatest covers on that album. That's Summer Breeze, Seals and Crofts' Summer Breeze. If you ever heard Seals and Crofts' original Summer Breeze, it's very kind of light, Summer Breeze takes me back, as opposed to theirs, which was so different. They did something really interesting with the covers. They made the covers their own. And I love when bands do that, because it's sort of like when an actor takes, a role that's been played various times, or takes a real person in life and makes the role their own. I really appreciate that a lot. And they've done that with so many different covers throughout their career. In fact, I think their covers are just are better than a lot of the originals, this being one of them. Summer Breeze. I mean, I must have listened to that song, I can't tell you how many times, over and over and over, from Josh's, those great, the great sounds he makes on that. In fact, that song, if a lot of people know, but some don't, was the opening song in the credits for I Know What You Did Last Summer. And that was huge at the time, I'm sure, for them. They were a band on a small label at the time, and if you know about their history, they really had to work their asses off to establish themselves, especially being on a smaller label, and I guess, having a sound not like any other. And it must have been huge to be on the soundtrack to I Know Which, such a big horror movie, which I think they're remaking to some extent or something like that. But I thought that was awesome. It was perfect. I remember getting all giddy about, like, holy shit, that's Type O Negative, man. That's Summer Breeze. But again, that's one of the many great songs on there. Frozen, right? Another phenomenal track off that. We Hate Everyone. Kill All the White People. It's a phenomenal album, left to right. I think it's one of the many albums that you can listen to from start to finish, easy, as all of their albums are. And they're one of the bands that I say that about, knowing that it is a little biased for me to say that, because that's my favorite band of all time. But at the same time, I'm being objective and truthful, I know, in my own opinion, because there's not many bands I know of that you can listen to from start to finish. And I'm going all the way back to 60s, 70s, 80s. There's not too many that you can just listen to. There's always one or two songs that you kind of like, pass that over, like one or two songs that you really don't dig. This whole album is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Can't Lose You, Blood and Fire. I was lucky enough to see them 14 times. And in those 14 times that I saw them, they always did Christian Woman, Black Number One. They did Frozen. I think, I saw them at Mulcahy's years ago, and the special effects was all that like fake ass cottony snow shooting up when they did Frozen. It was fucking everywhere, man, and Peter's hair and whatnot. But they did something that I had never heard of, or never appreciated, for that matter. And I love the way that they were able to change sounds and change songs within one song. So if you listen to Black Number One, there's always that part where it slows down, and you kind of, you hear the birds chirping, you hear the water running, and everything slows down to just the drums and Peter's voice, and then it picks back up again. Their extensions on songs were genius. Even when you listen to other albums, one that comes to mind is Tripping a Blind Man on the Dead Again album. I know it's a very long song, but the way that transcends into so many different sounds, and how the music changes speeds and just keeps on going within one song, I thought that was genius. That was something that I had never really heard, but in my opinion, only really intelligent, musically and lyrically smart bands do that. If that makes any sense, what I just said. Because that's got to be a bitch to do. Again, I don't play an instrument. I don't write music. I don't understand any of that. But I would think that that's got to be hard, especially when you're in the editing process of that, trying to put it all together as one. Especially going back to '93 when the technology wasn't what it is today. That's another thing you got to appreciate. 31 years ago, the recording technology wasn't advanced as it was today, I believe. So I think that you know just from a fan's point of view, it probably had to be a lot different, a lot more time consuming, I would think, especially with all the wonderful instruments that they have on that album. You could hear the great Paul Bento playing the sitar on that album, which stands out, really stands out a lot. I think it's in Can't Lose You. You hear it. I mean, there are so many things going on in that album, so many different sounds. Um, so many different lyrics going on that I think it just pulls you in. In fact, I've had people that have never been into Type O Negative before listen to the album from start to finish. And I don't know. I remember afterwards I would get a lot of the same results. And during them listening, I'd look at them and say, "What do you think?" They're like, "I don't know. I want to hear more, though. It's interesting. I got to hear more." And that's how I felt when I first heard it. I can't fucking believe it's been 31 years, man. I mean, it seems like a lifetime ago, yet it doesn't. I think because of the way everything's changed in the world, especially in the music game, it seems so far away that it's hard to fathom. But 31 years ago, man, was Bloody Kisses. So it's definitely a game changer. Definitely, in my opinion, one of the greatest albums of all time. It's an album that I can go back and listen to from start to finish constantly. It's an album that I can pick out several different songs and just, tell first time listeners, you got to hear this, you got to hear this. I think it really established who they were because, Origin of the Feces, another great album, and had a funny concept to it where they did the fake live recording thing. I think that album was sort of like, them still trying to find their unique sound. And I think Bloody Kisses is really where they established who they were. They had found that unique Type O Negative sound. And we've seen that with a couple of bands, I believe, in my opinion. If you go back and listen to the Red Hot Chili Peppers' first few albums, it does not sound anything like who they are now or who they were at their pinnacle. Same thing with Soundgarden. If you listen to, Bad Motorfinger, or you listen to the other two albums, the earliest stuff sort of was getting there at first, and then eventually it just sets and it becomes what they were, who they stood for. That's what I think this album did. And then, of course, came October Rust again, which 3 years later in '96, which was just beyond genius. So this album is a standalone album. I think it's one of the most well-known albums by people who know this band. And, for 31 years, man, I wonder what the sales are like now. It's got to be, I hope it's even more and it keeps increasing. Because again, I always felt that they were the most underrated band that I had ever heard. And I didn't mean that because I was such a huge fan. I thought, like, when I first heard that and first collected everything, first thing I'm thinking of is like, when people tell me I've never heard them, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Really? And you call yourself a music fan? You're not into this? Like, that's insane. So that's the way I feel because I'm so passionate about it. But yeah, man, 31 years ago. I mean, think about that for a second. I tell you one thing, now it being late August, like most people who are fans, that September, October time runs around. Things aren't the same without them. I always miss coming Halloween around and there's no Type O Negative concerts. Not that I miss it. So, go right back into you go back into the catalog and just, play away, man. That's what this is great for. So listen, if you got it on CD, if you got it on vinyl, if you still have it on tape, or you can find it on YouTube, wherever you got it, man, blast that shit today and listen to it from start to finish, especially for first-time listeners. Don't ask any questions. Just plug into it, listen, read the lyrics, just close your eyes, do whatever. I say listen to it and like be really tuned into it, man. And I think it just takes you to another place and just fucking, just blows your mind out, man. That's what it did for me. I mean, I was hooked. Once I heard those two songs and I heard the rest of the album, I'm in for life, man. That's it. So 31 years, Bloody Kisses. I'll be coming back at you a lot more with some more episodes, looking to expand this a lot more in the future. So, peace.